Forestry field or urban forestry obviously deals with lots of trees, tree planting. So I work in a small nonprofit in the Midwest. I am the go-to person, apparently, if people have questions about a tree on their property, a tree they saw while they were walking, a tree they read about. Just for pure fact of working at a tree company, I'm apparently automatically an arborist. I'm definitely a cynic. I'm very pessimistic in my life. I always expect the worst. But part of me just latches onto that because it's like, we really should be able to just unite behind our shared humanity. I'm feeling moderately optimistic about our future, but yeah, who knows? I probably would have said,
life is a journey, yours starts here. If you're feeling lost, then have no fear. There's always a seat at the tavern, as the legend goes, where the fire's warm and the ale flows cold. You can share your story, whether you're young or old. Tell tales of your glories or sorrows. If things are going great or you're down on your luck, spent too much of the same and you're feeling stuck, share what you know on Gamers Growing Up. GGUP. GGUP. GGUP.
Welcome back to GGUP, the show where we hang out with gamers in their favorite video games and talk about tackling the main quests of life, finding purpose, building success, and spreading love. This week, we're joined by my good friend, Enzo. Enzo, welcome to the show, man.
hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners, let them know who you are, what you do, where you're from, and if you're comfortable, your age.
Yeah. My name's Enzo. I am 28 years old, or years young, I suppose. Yeah, I currently work in the forestry field, and I've known Nick since 2006, 2005, whatever. I was in third grade. So yeah, we've known each other for a long time. But yeah, just making my way through the world.
Yeah, man, you are my oldest friend. It's really cool to have you on here and to hear a little bit about your journey. So you mentioned that you're working in the forestry field.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, forestry field or urban forestry obviously deals with lots of trees, tree planting. So I work in a small nonprofit in the Midwest. A lot of what we do is just planting trees in like urban areas. So like kind of along the streets and parks, stuff like that. There have been a lot of storms in the Midwest and over the last few years that have destroyed a lot of trees. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to replant a lot of those trees. Everyone knows why trees are good, but we're just trying to do the work and get those actually in the ground. So, but I've been in that field since about 2021, right after the pandemic and after I graduated from college, and just kind of found my way to this field. It's nothing I studied. I graduated from college in 2020 with a degree in English and music. So this has nothing to do with what I studied in school. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's good work. I work with good people. And it's one of those jobs you can go home at the end of the day and feel like you actually accomplished something and have that nice warm feeling in your tummy. So yeah.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that you're finding it fulfilling. And we'll get into the specifics of your job itself. But real quick, this is Gamers Growing Up, where we play our guests' favorite video games with them. Right now, we're in Dawn of War 2. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about Warhammer 40K, Dawn of War, what it means to you, and why you
Absolutely.
chose this game?
Yeah, so I first got introduced to Warhammer 40K when I was, I want to say I was in middle school, and my grandparents had a farm, and I was staying out with them. And my uncle, who was in the Coast Guard at the time, was a huge Warhammer 40K fan. So for whatever reason, he decided to come to the farm, and he brought his collection with him, I think to show me and my brother. And he laid them all out on this table. He collected Space Marines and Sisters of Battle at the time. And I just remember as a kid who grew up loving Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, I was just fascinated by this huge, expansive world that Warhammer had. I just remember voraciously reading anything I could get in my hands on afterwards. And I ended up collecting Space Marines and Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum or whatever the hell they're called now. So, but yeah, I've been kind of fanatic about Warhammer for a long time. Nick and I definitely bonded over that, played some matches here and there. And yeah, just I love Dawn of War. Dawn of War was one of my favorite Warhammer video games. Played the shit out of the older ones. But the newer Dawn of War 2 was a really fun game. I loved how it kind of brought in company heroes, the gameplay, and kind of went a little bit more tactical. So I really enjoyed that. And also, it was just a weird detail, but I remember one of the first Warhammer novels I read was the novelization of Dawn of War 2. It wasn't the best, but it was still pretty good and it was interesting and definitely brought me into the world.
Definitely memorable.
Yeah.
I think that one of my earliest memories is out and about in the mall in a games
Mm,
workshop looking at
mhm.
the Warhammer
Yeah.
figures, and this probably late teenager,
Yeah.
early 20-year-old guy was like, "Hey kid, I'll paint you one. Don't worry." And I came back a couple hours later, I still have the
Yeah, yeah,
figure. It's such a cool way to
yeah,
bring people together. It's a neat community.
yeah,
I can really agree with what you say with the Company of Heroes. Bringing that in, I played a lot of that game, and
yeah,
Dawn of War has a very similar cover
yeah,
RTS style of combat. It's a lot of fun. It's a game that means a lot to me
yeah,
too, and I'm glad you picked it. It's fun to be
yeah,
back in this world and sharing it together as we have for a long time. So we like to start off the kind of deep conversation of
yeah.
the show by asking you, in your life at this moment, what's the most important thing to you right now?
I'm not gonna get too deep into any ongoing news stuff, but for sure what's important to me right now is so much out of our control in our day-to-day lives. I think just being of service to people, being there for your friends, your loved ones, the people in your community. Really, that's all we can do is just help the people that are closest to us and do what you can to make an impact on other people's lives and just keep on trucking. So, yeah, I would just say, yeah, just being there for people, being of service, and doing what I can to help. That's what's important to me right now.
Going on your friends' podcasts. I appreciate you. And I think that's
No.
a really awesome spot to be aligned. Being of service to people is one of these paths, a way to make life feel a little more fulfilling.
Yeah,
We'll talk about purpose a little later on in the show,
sure.
but just from a overhead, would you say that aligns with some of your
Yeah,
purpose?
100%. Yeah, just being there for people and making a positive change where you can. That's all we can really do as people.
Beautiful. So, can you tell us a little more about your current job?
Yeah,
What is your position title? What's your day to day?
yeah.
What's it like to work an average week in this job? And then, more generally, about the field. What can someone expect if they're getting into forestry? And yeah, just give us an overview.
Yeah. So I'm currently what's called a development and volunteer coordinator. One of the things you should expect working in the nonprofit sphere or the forestry sphere in general is that nonprofits are by definition very small. I think my company only has 30 employees total spread across the Midwest. With how that works, you have to wear a lot of hats. It's like you're never just one thing in a nonprofit. You have to be just by necessity, you have to be several things at once. So yeah, a lot of what I do is kind of more on the development side of things. So what development means is basically fundraising. So we're a nonprofit. We don't make a lot of money. So it's really up to myself and the people in my department to apply for grants, to talk to different companies and government entities about sponsoring us, just trying to basically hustle as much as we can to get some funds for us to use for our company. So that's a lot of what I work on. And then the other component is volunteer coordination, where I do a lot of stuff in like rural areas to coordinate volunteers who are interested in getting involved in tree planting and also connecting them with like corporations that want to send out volunteers and just kind of being that interface between companies that want to give back to the environment and have volunteer experiences and setting up those plantings and logistics. So yeah, day to day, it really varies. I mean that, and that's something you should expect in the forestry field is every day kind of brings a different challenge. So a lot of my time is spent working on grant applications, which basically it's like a college application, except there's a lot of money riding on it, which I guess also applies to college applications. But so yeah, I write a lot of grants, do a lot of research, talk to our different departments about what I can communicate to our partners and donors. And then, yeah, the other part is working with specific companies that have approached us to want to set up a volunteer planting and just working out the logistics of that, telling people where to go, making sure the trees get there, all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, every day differs. So usually I'm in the office just writing stuff, but some days I'm hopping into a pickup truck and picking up a shovel and digging some holes or I'm getting loads of mulch and stuff. It really differs. And that's part of what I really enjoy about it is it always kind of keeps you guessing. No 2 days are the same. And it's just a very dynamic experience overall.
Sounds like you're very active and engaged in the community. I want to ask just for any of our listeners who don't know they've heard the term nonprofit,
Hmm.
they're not really sure about the specifics.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what a nonprofit is,
Yeah.
what it means to work there,
Yeah.
and if you've had other jobs that weren't nonprofit, how they
Yeah.
compare?
Certainly. Yeah. So a nonprofit is a company that's been created not for the express purpose of making a profit, but to service a single need or niche in a community or just in society in general. Stuff like Meals on Wheels, if you're familiar with, that's a nonprofit. Habitat for Humanity, the Humane Alliance. Everybody has their different kind of slices they want to carve out, but really the company, instead of selling products or trying to sell a service, what we really focus on is providing a service for different people. What's important to me is being of service to other people. That's really what nonprofits are all about. Working in a nonprofit, it's definitely a lot different from some of the other jobs I've had. In the past, I worked for a government public works department as a temporary worker. I did that for a year or so. I also worked as a fry cook in a local grocery store, which was that was interesting. And I've done various work study jobs and gigs here and there. But yeah, I would say the nonprofit, the tough part is with how the name is, you don't make a lot of money in a nonprofit. That's kind of the nature of the
But
beast.
you do get paid. I think
You do
that's a
get paid. Yeah, sorry.
a
Yeah.
lot of people think
Yeah.
that it's like volunteer work,
No.
but it is a
Yeah.
real job.
It
You
is
are
a
getting
real job.
paid. It's just the company's kind of
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. So I will say, yeah, there are a lot of nonprofits that rely on volunteers to fill what you would consider as staff positions, but most nonprofits have a dedicated staff that are paid. We get benefits, we get health insurance. I don't make all the money in the world, but I make enough to live on. So that's all well and good. My company is structured pretty traditionally. I mean, we have a CEO, we have a board of directors, we have a CFO, and I have a manager, but really it's all on just a much smaller scale, and just the purpose of the company is very different. But yeah, we still get paid, we still make money, we still get benefits.
Yeah, while we're talking about money, would you say that you make enough to live a comfortable life? And do you feel fairly compensated for the work that you do?
Yeah. That's a tricky question, but yeah, I would say overall I make enough to get by. I live in a pretty nice apartment in a nice part of town. I make decent enough money to cover that, the rent of my apartment, my student loans, standard expenses. Whether or not we're fairly compensated for the work we do, I mean, there have been some really grueling days where I'm like, wow, I'm not making enough money to justify having to work this hard. But I would say overall, frankly, there are a lot of great benefits at the company. I think between that and just the overall rewarding sense of the work we do, I think it ends up in a grand sense, it's fairly compensated. Yeah.
Awesome, man. And can we hear a little bit? You touched a bit on your journey, like the
Mhm.
path of job to job that you worked.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you were looking for when you got those different
Yeah.
jobs and what avenues you took in order to get them?
Yeah.
So, was it connections that you made with people? Was it things just they were local and you
Yeah.
kind of walked into a local establishment and tried to get a job? What and how were you doing to find work? And what did you find to be the most essential parts of that process, finding a job and building a career path as you found your own way?
Yeah, totally. I guess to answer that, I'll go back to my college. So, like I said, I graduated in 2020 with a double major in English and music. Really, my life's passion has been writing. I love to write. Nick and I are currently working on a book. I have several side projects I'm also working on. So that's really what I'm passionate about. But the sad truth is, especially these days, you can't make a living as a writer, really, until the point where you publish a book that makes it big. You can't pay the bills as an aspiring writer. So a
Yeah.
lot of my life, my goal has been just to find something that I enjoy doing, but will pay the bills enough to let me do stuff on the side. And that's a really tricky thing to find. I've it's like it's especially when you don't have like a clear vision of when what you're passionate about and what you want to do for work doesn't perfectly align, that can be very tough. And that definitely made it very difficult when I was looking for a job. But in college, I had a fair amount of work study jobs. I did everything from picking up garbage to being basically a receptionist. And that was all well and good. But yeah, after I graduated, I really needed to find like a job that I could start making some good money in. So I went to a community college first for 2 years, got my associate's degree, took a gap year, and that was the year I worked for the grocery store. So I was a fry cook at a grocery store, kind of a recurring theme with a lot of these jobs I've had is a lot of them just really the only requirement is do you have a pulse and then you're hired. So it's like, yeah, the bar wasn't super high for the grocery store, but it was a fun time. It was grueling work, truly grueling work, just sweating my ass off behind a fryer all day. And we did eat a lot of food. That was fun. We had easy access to lots of food that if you miscook a batch of fried chicken, it's usually all right to just eat something. I thought that was a really rewarding experience because especially with like a lot of what people would consider menial labor jobs, I think that's a misnomer because you get humbled. Any job in customer service, you immediately get humbled by customers coming up and screaming at you because something's wrong that's out of your control. You really learn to eat shit in a job like that, which I think is valuable. It kind of helps you build like a thick skin and
I
the
think
people.
life's gonna humble you no matter what.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just when and how.
Exactly. When and how hard it really depends. But yeah, I enjoyed it for that. And I met some lifelong friends, our mutual friend Will. I met there and
Good guy.
made
Shout out
some
to Will.
great friendships there. And you just meet different people. I mean, I remember there was this old Mexican lady named Fran. She was like in her mid 60s, but she was just a force of nature. She didn't take shit from nobody. She would ream you out if, you screwed her over, and I really respected that. But she was ultimately a really nice lady, and I liked her a lot. But yeah, so after the grocery store, I went back to college. That's where I got my English and music degree. And then out of college, I had the misfortune of graduating right as the pandemic hit. So yeah, I didn't really get a graduation, didn't really get that closure. I just kind of got shunted off into the quarantine and
Yeesh.
kind of having to figure it out. So yeah, as pandemic hit, that's when I was looking for jobs in my area. I was kind of interested in working in for some reason, the parks and recreation field kind of interested me, partially because of the show. It seemed like
I
interesting.
was gonna say.
I like the show a lot, and that seemed like decent enough work. So I was kind of looking for that. And yeah, when our local town had an opening in our public works department, I went for it. And that was another job. It was the same thing. You just eat shit constantly every day. It was like, a lot of what we did was there were a lot of leaves that build up. So we would rake the leaves into the middle of the road and we'd have to go through it to make sure there wasn't debris. But they'd have this big machine that would come through the middle of the road, suck all the leaves up. And we just had to make sure nothing would get in there that would wreck the machine. It was sweltering work. It was very hard in the heat and stuff and got yelled at by a lot of people and you had to eat shit. But like I said, like with the other job, I met some lifelong friends there. It was very interesting. Definitely an opportunity to peer into a different kind of sphere of life. Lots of people I never really would have met otherwise. There, and we got up to some shenanigans. It was a good time. Drove around and shooting the shit over lunch and stuff with some people. It's a real blue collar job, I'll say. Yeah, that was a job where you come back at the end of the day and you can really kick your feet up with a beer. And that was probably the most American I've ever been. It's
Yeah.
going to work in the heat, coming back tan to shit, bust open a beer at the end of the day, play some Call of Duties with the boys. And that was, yeah, it was the quintessential American experience. But I ultimately liked it a lot. And that job did kind of lead to my current position where I was in that kind of space of working with the forestry team in this town. And I was kind of starting to learn a little bit more about what they do. So I was started off by looking for a job in the forestry field, like for a government, but then went back to where I live currently. And actually, my grandmother knew the founder of the company and knew that they had a job opening. So she's like, hey, you should apply for this. It might be cool. And I applied, and it so happened they were looking for someone to run. It was a program aimed at employing high schoolers to plant trees over the weekend and throughout the summer. And they needed someone to lead that program. So I came in 2021 and took over that program in my area and kind of went from there. And now we're here.
And in that time, I know that you've had some growth through
Mm,
that. You've had a promotion, right?
yeah.
That's kind of
Hmm.
changed. You were working more outdoors
Yeah.
and now you've made it more indoors.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that's meant to you and how
Yeah.
it's changed your day to
Totally.
day?
Yeah, I'm coming up on my 4-year anniversary at this company now. So yeah, I spent the first 2 years leading this youth employment program where, yeah, every day I was out with the teens. I was planting trees, yelling at them to stop being knuckleheads. Yeah, one part teacher, one part menial laborer, getting yelled at by residents and stuff. So, and like I said, it was great work. I really liked to be doing it, but I wasn't very good at the whole like working with teens thing. Like I didn't have a problem, but it was more like I'm not good at disciplining high schoolers.
That has to be
Yeah,
strange.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
very strange for me. It's not something I'm used to. Yeah, a lot of my friends in college, since I was in the music program, a lot of them went on as music teachers. So they would do all this teaching certification courses and stuff. And I was like kind of partially aware of that, but I was never really good at it myself. So that was one thing I kind of struggled with. And frankly, those teens walked all over me. They got away with a
Ah,
lot. So it was not really a natural fit for me. And then I never mind doing menial work, but, ultimately I was like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life getting second degree sunburns and like getting slivers and
sheesh. Yeah.
picking ticks off of my armpit. So it's like I was looking for a change. So yeah, I talked to my boss a little bit about that and actually kind of started by I was looking for the door and I had a frank conversation with my manager at the time. And she was like, okay, well, I totally understand that. And we'd love to keep you on the team. So I think we'll promote you to a volunteer coordinator. So what that meant was, yeah, I initially worked a lot with our volunteers in our local city, kind of what I'm doing now. And I would still go out with the team to do plantings and stuff. It was a lot better there because I was starting to get a sense of what I was looking for, kind of more of an office position, more of a professional position. Nothing wrong with the menial labor, but that's not, I didn't want that to be my niche and I could see it becoming my niche. So,
That's fair.
yeah,
Trying to have some agency in your own career
yeah,
trajectory so you don't get stuck somewhere you don't want to
exactly.
be. I think that's really important and a
Yeah,
skill that you have to figure out as you're going
yeah,
because nobody prepares you for that.
absolutely. No, yeah,
So it sounds like it was really influential. You had this
yeah,
conversation with your manager and
yeah,
it led to you getting some more fulfillment out of
yeah.
like not that your work wasn't fulfilling
No,
before,
totally.
but it was more of the lifestyle that you were
Yes,
looking for.
it's more of the lifestyle I was looking for, less tough on my body. I was starting to have, like, joint problems and all kinds of stuff, and also the other part was driving trucks and trailers and stuff and doing complicated maneuvers. I was pretty good at it, but it always made me pretty anxious, and I didn't like having that be a part of my job every day, so kinda getting out of that sphere was nice. So, yeah, I was a volunteer coordinator. My manager was great. Shout out to her. She did a really good job of mentoring me, and then after I worked the volunteer position for a while, then I got a chance to move up to the big leagues I'm in now. I got poached to the development team, and it was a really great opportunity. The development director kind of approached me and was like, "Hey, we'd love to bring you over to this team." And she told me a little bit about the job, and I was like, "Wow, I can actually write as part of my job? That's pretty great." I mean, not that it's like stuff I prefer to write, but it's something. And so, yeah, took a chance and now I get to write as part of my job. And well, yeah, it is writing college essays essentially. And that's not the most fun thing in the world. It's a lot more fulfilling for me. I get to kind of flex my brain muscles more than my actual muscles, which is nice. And yeah, it's been really rewarding so far.
That's awesome, man. I'm so glad that you are continuing to mold your own
Hmm.
path into something that really aligns with where you want to be going,
Yeah.
getting to develop these skills so that they stay nice and sharp and strong. Because I
Yeah.
know you're a great writer and you have a really bright future ahead with whenever the world gets to be graced
Thank
by
you.
your work and the work we've been
I
working on
appreciate it.
together.
I appreciate it.
Um,
Likewise.
so I want to ask, what are you the most proud of so far in your career? Do you have a moment or an era, something that happened that really felt like very fulfilling?
Yeah, I think weirdly, when I first started at my current company, when I came into the company as the leader of this youth employment team, the company was in pure chaos. I didn't have a boss for the first year and a half I worked
Oh,
there. I had
wow.
no supervisor. Nobody taught me how to do my job. The only person who even remotely helped me was someone who was in a city on the other side of the state. So it's like I could only ever interact with them remotely and very infrequently. I was dropped into this position given a huge amount of responsibility and just had to make it work. And I think that's the fact that I made it. I didn't get fired, honestly. And it sounds like a joke, but I'm really, that's been my biggest source of pride at this company is that I was able to, I was freaking out. I'm not ashamed to tell you there were many days I was just like, what the hell am I doing here? What the hell have I done? I need to get the hell out of this. I need to somehow figure out how to pull the ripcord and get the hell out of Dodge. But I stuck in there. My mom helped me a lot with kind of talking me down from the ledge. And I just took it step by step. I compartmentalized, I broke everything down, and then I just took it day by day and managed to get the program into a pretty good shape. We started expanding how many teams we were hiring. We got new vehicles. We expanded the scope of work we had. I wasn't the only one who was doing it, but I was the major player in that. And I would definitely say, yeah, just being able to survive that. It was a crucible that I emerged from that I was very proud I did.
Very apt way to put it.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I think that expression of things forged in a
Mhm.
crucible through a trial really tend to be the strongest. And I feel like those are the moments in life where you get some of the most valuable
Yeah.
skills,
Yeah.
as well as where you build a lot of confidence. Are you feeling that you got a lot of confidence
Yeah,
from
for
that
sure.
era?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Really glad that you made it through that and all of the success that it brought,
Yeah.
giving you this upward momentum that's allowed you to get
Yeah.
to somewhere that really is more in alignment with where you want to be.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit on job security? Do you
Yeah.
feel like your job is at risk right now at all? Or do you feel pretty comfortable that you could work here as long as you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, so that is a tricky question, mostly because the current administration is not the friendliest towards nonprofits. And we had as much as, I believe it was 41% of our funding came from the federal government.
Oh, wow.
So when, let's just say, when cuts came through, it certainly threw the future of our company into jeopardy. We haven't laid anyone off yet. And I'm proud to say our CEO has been very adamant about that. We're not going to lay anybody off unless we absolutely have to, but it's certainly shaken Sphere up. So that by itself has introduced a certain amount of uncertainty in the future of my position, or I mean, hell, the future of our company as a whole. It's a little uncertain. And I mean, that's something every field has to deal with to a certain extent, is just the overall forces of society and government always have a huge impact on what anyone's position is going to do. But certainly for us, being an environmental focused nonprofit, and what I'll say is we're currently operating in a red state, has thrown things into jeopardy a little bit. So I would say my individual position is fairly safe, but only to the extent that the company is safe. And one of the things we're running up against now is just that there's so much competition for corporate grants that it's really hard to get. Like, companies are a lot more discerning about who they're going to give money to. And there's so much competition in the overall field now, especially in forestry, that it's very rare for us to get money from corporations. So that has definitely introduced a certain extent of uncertainty into the future. But overall, I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. I think we're adjusting to the Doge cuts pretty well. We have a lot of contingency plans that we started putting in place once that started coming out. And I think we've pivoted fairly well. We're starting to work more closely with like local governments and local corporations, and that has yielded some results. So I'm feeling moderately optimistic about our future, but yeah, who knows?
I think that's something really interesting that we should highlight. You hear these government cutting down on waste, getting more efficient. It sounds very like purely good. People who are like corrupt aren't able
Mhm.
to funnel money out anymore. But when you start to look at the wider impact it has, you have nonprofits
Yeah.
literally planting trees, trying
Mhm.
to keep our world alive and healthy.
Yeah.
And they're feeling some of the
Oh,
effects of
yeah.
this. And it
Feeling
sounds
hurt.
like pretty significantly. So this is
Yeah.
a large portion of your guys'
Yeah.
funding and something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I will say the Arbor Day Foundation, which is one of the big players in our space, they've suffered pretty badly from what I've heard. And obviously, like the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Park Service have all had significant cuts. So, and I'm all for efficiency. I'm all for cutting down on waste, but it's important to remember there are real people who are losing their jobs, people who have to go look for a new one or out on the streets now. And yeah, like you said, it's important to keep that in mind.
And we will lighten things up in just a minute
Yeah,
here. But while we're in the grim and the gritty, I do want to, we're not an AI podcast, but I don't
sure.
want to talk about it too much.
Yeah,
But I do want to hear your take. How do you foresee AI affecting your field as
yeah,
it starts to become more prevalent? Do you think it's going to change the way you work? Are you
yeah.
worried about it replacing you?
It already has. I mean, not replaced me, but it already has affected our job, is especially in grant writing. And I'm taking a class right now to get a grant writing certification. And some of the things they talked about there is that AI has changed the grant writing field totally. I mean, lots of people who write grants are using AI now to either write the entire application or help them write aspects of the application. And the most recent thing I heard is now a lot of companies and corporations that give grants are using AI to select applications. So in a weird way, it's like people are using ChatGPT to write their application, and then ChatGPT is picking which application to give money for. So it's like two different sets of AI are deciding who gets the money, and it's a little unsettling to say the least.
that's so mirrored and in parallel with the job search
Mhm.
market these days,
Yeah,
where everybody's using AI to optimize their resumes so that AI will not filter it out.
exactly.
It's we're overcomplicating our lives a
Yeah.
little bit through the simplification of things.
Yeah.
It's abstracting a little bit of our
Yeah,
humanity almost.
exactly.
But I'm glad to hear that the field is adapting with it
Yeah.
rather than being replaced by it. That is good.
And it's also tricky because I'm interested in AI personally, and I use it in certain aspects of my job. And I definitely see the future ramifications. But one thing to keep in mind too is, especially for me coming from the forestry field, is that the environmental impact of AI is, I don't think a lot of people realize how much these like data centers, how much water it takes to do this, how much power production it takes. And it's like, even if we're moving towards a more sustainable power or I guess energy field, it's like, I don't know, these AI, just asking GPT to do one thing takes a lot of water, takes a lot of environmental resources, and it's something we're going to have to reconcile with. I love AI as much as the next guy, but it's got a real impact on the environment.
Well, it's a good thing you're planting those trees to
Yeah,
try and heal
trying.
the
Yeah.
environment a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so I promised that I'd lighten things up a little bit. Let's do that now.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about your journey coming of age.
Mhm.
So you were getting out of high school
Yeah.
and trying to figure out, am I going to
Mhm.
college? What do I want to do with my life? Getting to this milestone that everybody eventually does,
Yeah.
where you're trying to find your own path. You've talked a little bit about what that path looked like. Can you talk about it a little more?
Yeah.
But with the framework of, and bear with me as I get a little esoterical here, but where was your personality as an adult starting to come together? How did these experiences start to shift you from the mindset of a teenager who's just
Yeah.
along for the ride in high school, as I think many people are, to someone who's more focused on finding your own path and figuring out what you want out of life?
Yeah. Certainly. So, coming out of high school, I had no earthly idea what I wanted to do with my life. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
For sure.
I was totally lost, didn't know what I wanted to do. So, I kind of decided to just take it step by step. And I think we were still in that era where the path you had to take was you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job. And that was still when that was an expectation that that could happen. I decided to go to college mainly because of that. I mean, mainly because I thought that was the thing you do. So I had no earthly idea what I wanted to do, but I think that's sort of where the music part came in as far as my academic career went was I've been playing tuba since the third grade. I'm fairly good at it, I would say. And I figured I could use that to leverage some scholarships maybe in college. So I kind of started there, and then my interest in writing definitely got me into English. And there was a point where I was deciding between did I want to pursue an English degree or did I want to pursue a creative writing degree? And sometimes I do honestly wish I had done the creative writing degree, but my logic at the time was that if I went for the English degree, that the way the English curriculum works is it's a lot more about like analysis and research and kind of coming up with your own conclusions. So I thought that would maybe be more valuable in the workforce than learning to do creative writing, which I'd already been doing some creative writing at the time. And my reasoning at that point was you can always learn how to creative write through YouTube videos or just doing the work and figuring out what works and doesn't. So I figured I would go for the English degree. And that did help me a lot, I think, with sort of figuring out how to view the world, how to view myself. Certainly, it was just the emphasis on analysis and kind of trying to take a critical look at things definitely shaped a lot of how I go about in the world. I won't say that the woke mind virus got me or anything, but certainly it taught me to not take anything at face value and make sure that before I believe something, there's evidence to support it, that there's other people supporting it, just looking at all the different angles. And I guess, yeah, it kind of helped me develop a sense of empathy in a way. And that's definitely one thing I try to keep in my life is just trying to look at what people are experiencing from their point of view and try to keep that in mind with the kind of overall holistic view of our society. As for how I started growing into adulthood, well, that's kind of a tough question. And I'm not sure I've reached it fully. I think we all keep growing all our lives, but definitely I came from a very, I would say, lower income family. We lived on the East Coast at one point and we were on food stamps. So I remember that very vividly. The wonders of government cheese and all that. But I feel like that kind of upbringing and kind of the struggles that came with that led me to be pretty self-sufficient. Nobody's going to swoop in and save the day for you 9 times out of 10. And you really just got to buckle down, do the work, and figure it out. Throughout my life, that's been growing me into a more independent person. And that was the big kind of transition between high school is like having a relatively more cushy, like there were a lot of safety nets in high school and living with your parents. And then I just kind of came to the point where it's like, there is no safety net. Oh shit. I got to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to get health insurance? And I think, yeah, just that experience of having to go it on your own without any sort of support really from anyone, it's a very formative thing for me.
So I'm hearing a lot of what you got out of college is this evolution of the skills and mindset that was already starting
Mm,
to form from your childhood,
yeah.
but it opened up your perspective a little bit and helped you to better define how you viewed the world. I
Mhm.
think that that's pretty common. I think that's, from my experience, also, I think one of the most useful things I got out of college was the mindset
Yeah.
and sort of these like soft skills, how to speak,
Absolutely.
how to present,
Absolutely.
how to really commit to something and
Yeah.
work hard on it when it gets tough and you're facing a lot of adversity. So I think I agree. I'm glad you talked about
Yeah.
that a little bit. These kind of, it's not just the things you're going there to be taught, the literal knowledge.
Yeah.
Like domain knowledge is always useful in a
Yeah.
field, but it is really these more soft skills
Mm,
develop as you develop yourself through the
yeah.
challenges that college poses to you that really can be the most impactful going on later in your life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, this is Gamers Growing Up.
Okay.
And I want to ask you a little bit. It doesn't have to just be video games,
Yeah.
but board games, card games. What are some skills that you've learned from being a gamer? And do you use those in your everyday life now?
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, this is gonna sound a little cheesy, but one of my all-time favorite video games for sure has to be the Mass Effect franchise.
Same
I
here.
love the Mass Effect franchise, played the shit out of every one of those games. But I think in a weird way, I always like to play kind of the Paragon route, be the knight in shining armor, that kind of thing, but I also feel like the emphasis, if you play the Paragon route in those games, the big thing that your Commander Shepard kinda demonstrates is a diplomatic approach to everything. And I always that was something that really appealed to me because Commander Shepard is this Giga Chad soldier marine who's shooting the bad guys all the time. But the fact that if you play the Paragon, and this is a testament to how good the writing is in that series, is that for this hardened soldier to go about any situation he can, trying to be diplomatic and reach a mutual solution and find compromise. I think that really had a big impact on me as far as how I approach the world is like, obviously the first instinct and the easiest instinct is confrontation or trying to one up the other person or show yourself to be the alpha or whatever the hell. But I think one of the things that really latched onto with Mass Effect was that I think it's works a lot better if we come to compromise, if you start to have that sense of empathy with other people who maybe come from a background that is totally foreign to you, something you don't understand, that just seems totally bizarre. But just taking that first step of being like, hey, let's try to figure out what we have in common. Let's figure out what we can do in common. And just the sense that things often go better if everybody's working together towards a unified central purpose than it does if they're always at odds or trying to one up each other or stab each other in the back. I think was very formative in my life. And that's something I try to extend every day is unless you give me a very specific reason to not like you or like if you, you know, throw the first stone, I'm always going to treat people on the merits of their own personality. I'm always going to treat them on how you approach the world. And that's kind of informs all my decisions.
So I'm hearing already Commander Shepard is one of them.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about heroes or
Yeah.
more just like inspirational figures, whether they be characters or real
Yeah.
people in your life or people in pop culture. Like, where do you draw inspiration from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think I do naturally gravitate towards those kind of like diplomatic characters. I'm a big sci-fi guy. So one of the other things I love is this series called The Expanse, which is a book series and it's a TV show. Soon to be a video game too. So I'm really looking forward to that. But the main character of those books and shows is this guy named Holden, who's this total he's like a paladin in space. Like a lot of people call him Jon Snow in space, but I just love he kind of shares that sense of like he's naive in a way that I really like. He still sees this, and I won't go too deep into the fixation I have on the expanse, but it's this very fragmented, like factional world that always at odds. And he has this very naive kind of worldview where he's like, if we just broadcast the truth to everybody, if everybody's on the same page, then there's no reason to fight and we can all move forward together and focus on more important things. And well, I think the fundamental issue for me is like, I'm definitely a cynic. I'm very pessimistic in my life. I always expect the worst. But part of me just latches onto that because it's like, we really should be able to just unite behind our shared humanity. And it's like, not to get too much into like global warming or anything, but I really think that's one of the most existential threats we as a species face. And it's like we're spending all our time focusing on all this other stuff when it's like, let's get behind one thing and fix our planet or make sure everybody has water to drink or food to eat. It really should be that easy. So I would say, yeah, like Holden is definitely an aspirational figure for me. As far as, yeah, like going through life, I mean, I would definitely say my mom is a big influence on me too. She has that very diplomatic sense about her. Her ability to just talk to like total strangers for hours and hours about random things is something that's totally foreign to me as a lifelong introvert. So I've always definitely admired that and tried to strive for that.
That's awesome, man. And would you say that this sense of diplomacy has really helped you being a leader, having to come into these leadership roles and work?
I would say so. Yeah. At my job, it's a very esoteric mix of different personalities, and oftentimes those personalities clash. But yeah, it certainly has influenced my try to approach everything as sort of a mediator. When two people are disagreeing on something, I want to like let's take a breath, let's step back, let's look at where our common facts are, and then let's figure out a game plan from there. So it's definitely I would say it influenced my professional persona and my personal life as well.
One last question in this sphere.
Hmm.
Do you feel any pressure to fit into some sort of predefined role? And how has that affected your journey of self actualization? Has this changed as you've been getting older, or have you always felt the same sorts of pressures?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly everybody feels a certain measure of pressure from society to fit into a role. I guess as a lifelong introvert, I feel often pressured to be like kind of the stoic, scholarly type who's the authority voice on everything and will swoop in and be like, well, actually, actually technically that's incorrect. And like kind of like the quintessential nerdy stereotype. I definitely feel pressured to be that. And certainly there are a lot of aspects of me that are that. But it's like there's no point really in my mind to shove anybody into a corner and make that's the only thing they can ever be. I think everybody is very multifaceted and we should embrace people's quirks and idiosyncrasies.
Yeah, I think that's really well said.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you haven't drank any water recently, here's your hydration reminder because it's sponsor time. Hey, do you notice how nice and crisp those captions look? That's all thanks to Descript. This show wouldn't be possible without the epic editing tools provided by Descript. When I was starting out making the podcast, I searched far and wide for editing software that would let me separate my captions from those of my guests, and Descript was the only software I could find that allowed me to bring my vision to life. Now, they're not a sponsor of this channel yet, but I'd like your help to change that. I really cannot recommend Descript enough as a video editing tool. Their direct text editing, AI filler word remover, and top-tier captions are just a dream to work with. If you want to see this podcast grow, let our friends at Descript know down in the comments that they should sponsor this show. Thank you, Descript, for the great video editing tools. Are you enjoying the show? Do you want to let your friends know that this is your new favorite podcast? You should head on over to the official GGUP merch store and get that legendary loot. Get dripped out, stylish shirts, hats, and even stickers. There are over 100 designs created by yours truly, and you can get them all on all kinds of things. Click the link in the description to check out the merch store today. Now, back to the episode. So, talking a little bit about your relationships now, and especially how your career affects them, can we talk a little bit? We're getting to the part of the show where I'm going to ask you for a few numbers.
Okay.
So, when we talk about your friends, I want to hear about where you met them and what friendships have carried on to this point in your life.
Yeah.
You're 28. So, at this point, could you break into percentages where your different close friends have come from? So,
Okay.
like your friends from growing up,
Yeah.
your friends from college, your friends from various jobs that you've worked, or just friends that you've met as an adult out in the world. If you could break those into percentages for us.
Yeah. I guess I would say like maybe maybe like a quarter of my friends are from growing up. So yeah, you're definitely one of them. I have a couple friends from high school that I'm still really close with. And yeah, it's not necessarily like a constant thing, but we all have different chats and group chats and we still check in every now and then. And every time I'm back in town, these guys are the first ones I call to get back together and kind of reminisce about the old days or just find out what's new and kind of moving forward. And I'm very lucky to have, I guess I would say I have three pretty close friendships from growing up that I maintain pretty closely these days. Then I'd say after that, I would say maybe four. I'm pretty bad at math. So let's say like 40% of my friendships are from college. So I was in a fraternity. To be fair, it was a nerdy fraternity. So we weren't creepy like that. But yeah, I had a pretty good group of friends from there that I still keep in contact with a lot. A lot of them are in the town I live in now, so we get together for beers and stuff or go to the games together. So that's always pretty fun. And then I would say, yeah, the remaining whatever 10-15% are pretty close friendships I've made at work. I think those are the ones that are the most active in my life currently are my work friends because I see them every day. And I think also there's a certain degree of like, we were in the shit together. We were in the trenches together. So it's like that basically trauma bonding, like over all the stuff we had to go through. So yeah, I would say that would be the last group of my friends are just kind of close work friends that I have. And we get together outside of work too. And we usually get drinks after Friday work days and try to get together outside of work if we can.
Have you made any friends from like the community? Or is there anywhere that you go to if you're looking to be social?
Yeah, I would say I've actually made a couple friends just based on people we've worked with professionally. There's this guy, his name's Matt, and he works at a nonprofit in my town. And we've gotten pretty close after we worked with him for a project. And yeah, I get together with him every now and then. I would say also, yeah, like there are a few people who were at the company and now have left that are kind of my go-to if I need to get a beer with someone or just need someone to kind of dump stuff on. And like a lot of introverts, my network of friends is a little bit smaller than most people, but I would say the depth of those friendships is enough that it keeps me going.
I can attest for that. I'm glad to hear that you've got a pretty strong network around you of friends who are supporting you.
Thank you.
Now, who do you game with? When you want to play a video game, who are you reaching out to?
Yeah, this is tricky because I'm pretty much been a single player Andy for the last couple of years.
Ah, all right.
But yeah, I would say usually when I'm playing games, it's with, yeah, like probably you or like some of my other friends from here. Alternately, there are a couple college friends that I game with every now and then. And some of the friends actually from my two other jobs, actually, I've been playing with more. There's a guy that I play Call of Duty with every now and then.
So, do you network a lot? If you do, can you talk to us a little bit about what your methodology of it is and any advice you might have for someone who might find it intimidating?
Yeah. No, for sure. And listen, networking is still something I struggle with a lot. And I wouldn't say I go to network actively. It's usually like I kind of have to network or
Would you say it's really important in your field?
I would say it's fairly important. Yeah. Because for the forestry field and for fundraising, especially, it's a lot of personal relationships is what can get you through the door and make the difference between your application and someone else's. So, like, if you're applying for a grant at, say, an insurance company and I've already met somebody from there, that's going to make my application for a grant a lot more attractive than somebody else who's just kind of randomly cold calling for an application. So I would say it's pretty important in my field. Yeah, so I go to networking events, I would say every couple weeks through my job. There are different like kind of community networks in my area. And you listen, it's still very intimidating for me. I mean, I'm much more comfortable as an introvert. It takes me a lot to kind of like just cold approach people and talk from that perspective. But I guess if I had advice, it's like you kind of just got to accept it's going to be awkward as hell. You got to kind of, it's going to suck. You're going to walk up to people, and nine times out of 10, it might just be like, hey, how's it going? And then awkward silence. And then you're like, oh, well, cool. Here's my business card. But that's kind of the nature of the beast. And it's like, I think, especially for like, it's harder to network just kind of out of the blue. But if you're going to a networking event, and this is something my current boss was telling me, it's like everybody's there to do the same thing. Everybody's there to make contacts, to make relationships. And everyone, probably odds are most people are feeling just as awkward as you are. So when you kind of acknowledge that, I think that makes it a little bit easier to kind of get into that groove of networking with people. It doesn't hurt to have like a few kind of for lack of a better term, pickup lines or like kind of intro lines to get in the door there. Another thing I like to do is just if I'm at a networking event and I notice there are people kind of hovering on the edges like I like to do, I'm just kind of walking up to those people and be like, hey, my name is Enzo. I work at this place. Where do you work? And then just kind of seeing what happens there. So and you'll always come back with like interesting stories, I would say. One time I went to a networking event and I was talking to this guy and he invited me to present to their company about my company. And through the course of our conversation afterwards, I found out that he was part of a local flat earth society, which was
Whoa.
interesting. Yeah. I was like, wow, interesting. Okay. And that apparently I was accidentally presenting to pretty big chunk of a local flat earth society. So I was like, wow, all right. I guess in all fairness, flat earthers can get behind trees just as well as anybody else. So
Some wild experiences
yeah,
and some very valuable advice.
yeah,
I think that you talking about having empathy for
mm,
others, feeling that they're just feeling as awkward as you are, as well as having empathy for
yeah,
yourself, that you're not so special. You're the only one freaking out.
yeah.
No, it's everybody
Exactly.
feels
No,
a little.
everybody. Yeah.
No, but it's very rare is the person who loves
Yeah.
meeting strangers
Yeah.
and trying to establish connections in regards to work. You have
Yeah.
to really love your work, really be very extroverted for that to feel 100% natural.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people fall into this more really large net
Yeah.
of this isn't exactly what I would choose to do, but it's a
Right.
good thing to do. And
Exactly.
pushing yourself
Yeah.
is how you grow.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you've been able to push through that
Exactly.
and not be held back by your own like inclinations
Yeah. For sure.
or comfort. And it's good that it's been helping you professionally.
Yeah.
So speaking about your relationships, can you talk a little bit about how your career has affected your own relationships?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I keep saying that. Yeah, I would
This
say.
is a great show.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I would say it's definitely impacted my relationship. Well, I guess the funniest way it's impacted my relationship is now that people know I work at a tree planting company, I am the go-to person apparently if people have questions about a tree on their property, a tree they saw while they were walking, a tree they read about. Like, just for pure fact of working at a tree company, I'm apparently automatically an arborist. So I'm now the go-to person for all those questions. And well, I know a decent amount. I'm not an expert. I don't have an arborist certification. So I do my best, but that's definitely shaped a lot of my interactions. And I guess the biggest way it's kind of impacted that is just in the assumptions I feel like people have about me. And when people hear you work at a tree company, they're like, oh, so you must be kind of like a tree hugger, hippy dippy type. Like you must be kind of out there. And it's like, I do my best to dispel those kind of stereotypes. And it's like, I certainly empathize with tree hugging, but I don't go out there hugging trees. I'm not particularly passionate about trees. I believe they're good and they help our environment, but I'm not. One of the funny things is a lot of my coworkers are kind of those people, and they'll sit around talking about, "Oh man, what's your favorite type of tree?" And they're like, "Oh, I really like cottonwoods, or I really like oaks." And honestly, that stuff kind of bores me to tears. I'm not. I'm like, I like trees. I don't care what type they are. So it's like that's kind of it's been interesting to kind of view it from different viewpoints and different perspectives. And it's I don't know where my personalities come out at the end of it, but it's some weird Frankenstein's monster of hippie like qualities with like not hippie like yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but kind of like that.
I think a lot of careers carry those sort of stigmas is a bit harsh of a
Yeah,
word, but it colors people's view of you, especially when
certainly.
you're first meeting them.
Yeah.
I know that as someone trained in architecture, I'm expected to know everything
Yeah.
about the entire construction
Exactly.
industry
Exactly.
front to back. And I mean, I try. I don't own a construction company.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's only so much that one person can know.
Yeah.
What I really want to get at though is do you feel like you have enough time for the relationships that are close to you? Or do you
Mm.
feel like your work bleeds into your personal life more than you'd like it to?
I would say my work bleeds into my personal life for sure. Yeah, and one of the tricky parts is while I'm grateful to have this new position where I write grants for a living, the unfortunate truth is that since I spend my whole day or usually large parts of my day writing stuff for work, when I get home, I have no energy whatsoever left to write for fun. Or it's like I just don't have that inspiration. And a lot of that kind of energy that before was kind of building up in the back of my mind while I was doing menial labor. And then I would be able to go home and bust out like two or three chapters. These days, it's like, wow, it's a struggle to even write like a page of stuff because it's like so much of that writing creative energy is going into work stuff. It's kind of hard to muster that. So that's definitely impacted it. And just the reality of my job is there are a lot of like weird kind of events that I have to go to, conferences, and it's definitely impacted my ability to like hang out with people as much as I want to or like do fun stuff as much as I want to because I got to truck across to like Wisconsin or something for a conference. I got to go out to St. Louis for this other thing. It's like, yeah, it adds up for sure. And it's a little bit more than I'd like, but it's kind of one of those things you just got to work through it. And then, someday I'm hoping I can find a job that's going to allow me to thread that needle and have that creative energy for myself while being able to fulfill myself personally.
Yeah, there is a real paradox in trying to do something with aspects of what
Yeah.
you love, where you don't want what you love to turn into work
Yeah.
and poison it, where you're like, oh God, this is all I have to
Yeah.
do. I'm no longer doing it for fun. It's a real tricky thing to navigate because you also don't want to do something you're not
Yeah.
engaged in with at all. You need it to align with some of your own interests or you're going to be bored to tears.
I remember in high school, actually, one of the things I originally kind of wanted to do as a profession was I wanted to be an editor. So, like, work at an editing firm or like a publishing house. And actually, I had a really good conversation with one of my English teachers at the time who was a published writer. And I had told her about this. And she was actually the one who talked me out of it because, to your point, that's what she was talking about is like when you spend your day reading other people's novels and having to go through or pretty much just handle the English language so granularly as an editor, that can totally diminish your desire to be a writer yourself. So she kind of steered me away from that and definitely kind of starting to dabble with that. I realized how right she was.
Yeah, I had some very similar advice at a pretty pivotal point in my life where I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was pretty certain I was either going to be a musician
Mm,
or a video game developer.
yeah.
And I got that same if you turn what you love into
Hmm.
work, you might not enjoy
Yeah.
the outcome of it. And I mean, I love design and can certainly speak on I think that doing design for work is very fun and very
Yeah.
fulfilling, but so little of the work that goes into it truly is
Yeah.
design.
True.
You start to see all of
Exactly.
the stuff that
Yeah.
you don't want to do that's
Right.
wrapped up in getting to do the work that's
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
And it can kind of muddy the waters a
Yeah.
little bit and make
Certainly.
all of it start to feel a little tedious or a little work like.
Yeah.
I know that I'm very much so looking forward to reading your professional work whenever you get it
Mhm.
published. I'd love to urge the community if you guys can rally in the comments and show Enzo some love here. Tell him how much you would love to read his works one day. I
Appreciate
know
that.
that he's a great writer.
Appreciate
We've been working on a project together,
that.
and I will have you back on the show
Yeah.
if
Sounds good.
whenever we actually approach
Yeah.
publishing,
Sure.
so we could push the book a little bit.
Total.
But in the meantime, let's shift the conversation a little bit
Yeah.
towards health. So, speaking about your health a little bit right here, I'd like you to imagine if you had a health bar over your head out of 100 and taking into account not just your physical health, but also your mental, your spiritual, your emotional health. Overall, holistically, what's your health sitting at these days, Enzo?
I would say probably 70%. Yeah. I think, yeah, overall, I'm doing
Solid.
pretty well. I've been in therapy for a while now, so that's been helping a lot, I would say. Certainly, we'll just leave it at certain world events have left me feeling pretty discouraged or otherwise anxious. But I think, like I said earlier, narrowing my focus on things that I can control in my life, being of service to people in my personal circle has definitely helped me kind of reframe how I'm feeling about things. So yeah, I mean, and it's a day by day thing. Some days are good, some days are bad, like anybody else. So I would say I have more good days than bad, but not as much as I used to. But overall, I would say I'm doing all right. Yeah.
So you brought up therapy, and without getting too into the weeds of it, just in general, would you say that's something that's really important to you in maintaining your health? Like, is that something that's healing your health up as life damages you?
I would say so. Yeah, certainly therapy is a good way to kind of just work through when life gets tricky or convoluted. I think it's a good way to kind of just get that off your chest. And my therapist has done a great job just kind of helping me. I tend to be very self critical in my life, very kind of self deprecating
Which
and
I
kind
think
of,
is a product of where we grew up. I
yeah,
know a lot of
certainly.
people who grew up in a very competitive public
Hmm.
school sphere
Yeah,
feel this same sort of thing.
definitely, for sure. And it's been very tough getting over that. And I'm far from getting over it now, but Yeah, therapy has definitely helped me kind of be a little bit more objective about things. And when I'm starting to kind of get down on myself or feel like I'm not doing a good enough job, just remembering what I learned in therapy is just kind of taking a step back. Is this really something that's going on, or is it just kind of in my head? And just having that kind of critical approach to my own mental health has definitely helped a lot.
That's really good. I'm glad to hear that you're getting the support that you need. I think that I felt the same thing in my life,
Mm.
that therapy is a really great tool to help you navigate
Yeah.
things, especially when you come across something in life that you haven't figured out before and you
Yeah.
don't have a great like role model who can directly apply. Like if you find a new situation where you're really like, wow, I need
Yeah.
someone to help me navigate this, it can be a really powerful tool for that. I'm going to leave it a little open ended here. If you want to speak a little bit about how your profession, what you do for work, but also your hobbies, how do they affect your health?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, my profession is definitely it might be like a net neutral, I think, ultimately with my work. Cause yeah, certain aspects of my work make me feel really good, definitely help my mental health, while the nitty gritty of it and the sort of unfortunate necessities of work kind of damage it for sure. So I would say my work is a net neutral, but yeah, I would say my hobbies just kind of hanging out with friends when I can, watching movies, watching TV shows, writing when I can. I'm in a writers group. I do that now, and that's been a lot of fun. So I would say, yeah, my hobbies definitely do a lot of heavy lifting and kind of keeping me overall positive and not slipping down to that despair hole.
Well, that's great. I think that 70 is a very reasonable place to
Yeah.
be. And I hope that as life continues, it only goes up from there for you, my friend.
Thank you.
So, shifting over, this is going to be the last number that I ask you for, I promise.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to preface it a little bit so you can think about it because this one's very it's hard to nail down for a lot of
Yeah.
people, I think. Talking about your satisfaction in life,
Mhm.
fulfillment. So start thinking of a number out of 100 for how you feel fulfilled in life or satisfied with life right now. But in your view, what is the criteria for a happy life? What does it take in order to look at your life and feel like, I'm happy with this, I feel fulfilled, I feel satisfied?
Yeah.
These are all of the things that to Enzo, right now, a life needs.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. I think the first thing that pops in my mind is synchronicity in life, I think is what really impacts that.
Big
So,
word. Can you
yeah.
define it for
So,
us?
yeah, and this might not be a perfect definition, but yeah, like just kind of having all the different, for lack of a better term, like the umbrellas in your life, having them all kind of align and work towards the same kind of feeling or goal.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
that's where, in my opinion, that's where satisfaction comes from. So, like, your profession, your personal life, your relationships, your social life, if all those kind of factors support each other and kind of create this holistically good feeling or this good net status. I think that's what kind of leads to a satisfying life. As for me personally, I would say probably I'm at like a more of like a 65%. Not wholly satisfied. I'm like, if I were to die today, I probably wouldn't die satisfied with everywhere my life is. I mean, moderately satisfied, but not completely satisfied. There's still a lot in my life I want to do. I want to travel a little bit more. I want to have more experiences like that, explore other professions maybe. So there's still a lot I kind of want to do. And of course, the ultimate dilemma for me is always I'm definitely a grass is greener on the other side guy. Anything I'm in, I'm always going to be like, oh, might be better if I do this. And whether or not it's true or not is kind of irrelevant. But yeah, I do think I have a couple more adventures left in me.
And I think that's a great way to frame it. You're only so low because you imagine how high life could
Mm,
go. And I think having a very broad sense of the satisfaction you
yeah.
imagine for yourself is a very good thing to do. I certainly endorse that. Now, are you doing anything right now to work on that? Are things you're striving to do in your life actively to help you
Mm,
feel more satisfied? I know that you're working in a field that
mhm,
really aligns with you and you've shifted your career towards things that really interest you.
yeah.
Besides for that, what else?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are a couple things in the works right now. I'm working towards a grant writing certification. So once I get that, I'll be able to put that on my resume and potentially be able to get any sort of grant writing development job I want in many different fields. I think the other thing too is I'm building up towards applying for a English teaching job in Japan.
Oh,
I'm potentially
wow.
going to apply for that in November. Even if I get in November, I don't know if I'm going to go for it, but I talked it over with like my therapist and some of my family, and The perspective I kinda have is just gonna throw my iron in the fire, see what happens. If I don't get it, oh well. But if I do get it, then that'll open up another option, and then I'll kinda get to reexamine where I'm at then. So, yeah, I definitely like to go to Japan again. I guess I probably should have brought this up way earlier, but I was born in Japan. My father's Japanese. I'm half Japanese, so that's always been a big part of my life. That heritage and that culture has always kinda impacted me, and it's something I wanna definitely live. I've lived here in the United States for most of my life since I was a baby, so I'm American through and through, but, that's definitely a part of myself I would like to reconnect with someday and kinda get a little bit closer to whenever I can.
That sounds like it has a lot of potential to be something that is a really meaningful chapter in your life. And I
Yeah,
hope that if that's where things go, that it does do that for you, my friend.
thank you.
And I fully blame you for any amount of being a weeb that I am. It is your
Fair
fault.
enough, yeah. I'm a
Um,
carrier, yeah. I
you
can't
made
catch it
it
myself, but
seem
I can
too
spread it,
cool.
yeah.
And the final thought in this, what motivates you to try and push yourself? I mean, moving to Japan is a huge
Yeah.
change, even if it's just for a time. Where do you think you draw that motivation from to try and improve this satisfaction that you feel in your life? Like, in order to align these umbrellas, as you've put it, where do you keep focus and draw this drive from?
People are the sum of their experiences, I think. I think who you are as a human being is very much informed by what you've experienced in your life, what has happened to you in your life. So I always kind of keep that in mind for like when I look at the person I want to be someday, and I don't necessarily know what that person is, but I kind of go through life thinking like, I just want to experience as much as possible. And not to get too philosophical or religious, but I'm not really religious. I guess I'm more of an agnostic, if you would call it anything. But in my personal worldview, I don't really see there being an afterlife. So by that logic, I better enjoy the life I've got. So that's kind of how I approach everything is I just want to experience different things, see a lot of different things as much as I can. And I just hope that someday, if I'm in my deathbed, I'll look back on this life and feel pretty satisfied with the breadth of things that I saw and did. And hopefully it's all right.
I think that's something I haven't talked much about on the show, but I studied abroad in college for
Yeah,
a
that's
while.
right.
And I think that travel is one of the greatest ways to really like open up your own perspective
100%.
and get a better sense of a different part of the
Yeah.
world because it is so easy to get trapped in your own regions or even like really a really micro scale
Yeah.
your community's way of
Yeah.
thinking. So I think that's really cool,
Yeah.
really exciting, a lot of
I
potential
appreciate it.
there.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing
Yeah.
some of these deeper motivations that you hold.
Yeah.
So talking about things that are deep,
Okay.
purpose.
Sure.
What does it mean to you? Is purpose something that you concern yourself with? Is it something you think about a lot? And what are you doing to try and find it if it is?
Yeah. That's a tough question. Purpose to me is, I think it's really what gives you the best sense of like satisfaction or the best sense of meaning in your life. I don't really necessarily believe that everyone has a preordained fate or purpose that they're assigned in life. I think that's something you just kind of have to figure out for yourself throughout your life, struggling with things and everybody stumbles. But I think just finding something that fulfills you as a person and also hopefully has a net positive on the world. I think that's kind of what I define as purpose, just something where those 2 things kinda marry.
So, would you say that you have approached finding your purpose, or is it something that you're still very much so in the trying to define it and moving incrementally towards nailing down a definition of?
Definitely the latter. Yeah, definitely find a lot of meaning in my job currently, but I don't think it's my purpose per se. So, yeah, it's definitely something I'm trying to parse out, something I'm trying to identify in myself, and then, yeah, like you said, just moving incrementally towards finding it every day. I think I'm starting to get there. I love just being able to help people, help communities. That's definitely one of the more rewarding parts of my job. Like I said earlier, I definitely believe that the environment is really important and it's something that we need to steward and take care of. So whether or not I stay in the environmental field, I don't know, but that's always going to be something I carry with me. But yeah, definitely just helping people or trying to help communities is something that really resonates with me in my current job and something in my past for sure.
So we're starting to get to the part of the show where we talk a little bit about giving advice to younger people who are trying to go through some of these same struggles that
Yeah.
you in your later 20s are still dealing with and grappling with. So, for a really younger person, somebody getting out of high school and they're in this same where a lot of people are, where like, what does my purpose mean to
Yeah.
me? How do I go about finding that? Can you talk a little bit about aligning your life and trying to keep it on track with things that are meaningful to you,
Yeah.
even in when you don't know what your ultimate purpose is? Any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you just gotta do stuff, and that sounds really broad and all-encompassing, but
It's so true.
yeah, you just gotta do stuff because I mean and certainly, like, lately, I've been struggling with there are lots of days where I wake up and I just don't feel like getting out of bed at all. I just wanna lay around and watch TV or something, and it's like, you gotta overcome that impulse. Whether or not it's something you want to do, you just gotta do stuff, so certainly for a lot of people who don't have jobs right now, like, I am definitely a big advocate of, like yeah, like, finding
I waved at him.
yeah.
We're in the studio together for this one.
Well, yeah, and it's like I have family members who are struggling with that too, and it's like, even if the job's not something you wanna do or something you're interested in, just finding some sort of job that you know will ultimately have a better impact on you, I think that's worth exploring. Like I said, a lot of my jobs, 90% of the time, I just ate shit and just had to, like, shovel it and deal with it, but I think that ultimately made me a better person. So, I think just kinda pushing yourself to have different experiences, and also and this is something everybody says, but just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is absolutely necessary in life. If I only stayed in my comfort zone, I would probably be in like a sealed bubble somewhere with an internet connection and never leave it again. That's my paradise, but I'm not doing that. I got to push myself to talk with people, to have different experiences, to have different impacts on people.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And now we've reached the part of the show I'm fondly calling Counterspell,
Okay.
where you get a chance to ask me any one question, any topic you want to discuss, something you want my advice on, my opinion, my take. What do you have for me? What would you like to hear me speak on?
How about what is your purpose? What are you coming to realize is your purpose?
Whew! My purpose? Well, I think that definitely going about making this show is bringing me closer in to finding what my purpose is.
Sure.
So let me say that I'm also someone who doesn't have a perfectly defined
Mm,
of what my ultimate purpose is. I certainly have learned a lot in this recent chapter in my life about what's important to me,
yeah.
what aligns with me, what I value, and learning what skills really define me
Sure.
right now, what skill bars I want to be progressing. So I've spoken a lot about how I've put a lot of effort into design, getting
Mhm.
good at design, and it's something as a really strong interest of mine.
Yeah.
But recently, while I've been going through kind of this chapter of struggle, this trying to find purpose is something that really has eaten at me. It
Yeah.
brings me a lot of, it took me to a really dark place for a while where I
Sure.
felt very lost, very like I'm successful, but none of it feels like it matters to me
Mhm. Mhm.
ultimately in the way that I want to feel fulfilled. Podcasts were a really huge part of that. I
Yeah,
think that
sure.
there's some people doing some really wonderful work.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about this because of the work of like Simon Sinek,
Mhm.
Jay Shetty,
Oh, yeah.
and some of these really large thought leaders in our time that I find a lot of inspiration from. So I think that helping people to find their journeys really aligns with me quite well. Like solving a problem that you've struggled with
Yeah.
is so fulfilling. And it really, I'm excited every time that we do anything with this
Yeah.
podcast. So I think that I'm on the right track
Yeah.
there. I don't have a perfect answer for what my purpose is, but I think it definitely involves being creative
Sure.
and helping others in
Yeah.
some way, which is really interesting because I'm not the type of person who was really inclined to the community. I'm kind
Mm.
of a
Right.
I've talked a little bit about how I'm kind of an extrovert, kind of an
Mhm.
introvert, but I'm very much so a like loner with my
Yeah.
friends. Like I want
Sure.
a core group of friends. I'm not out in the community a whole lot.
Yeah.
I've never been a big volunteer guy.
Right.
And then to realize that maybe I should be more.
Sure.
Maybe I should be interacting with a lot of people and trying to do whatever I can to help others not struggle as much
Yeah.
with the things that I have. I think that's really starting to define my own sense of purpose.
Sure.
I'm starting to feel a calling towards like helping other people
Nice.
navigate
Yeah.
this rough part of life. I think that there are so many young people feeling very lost
Yeah.
right now.
Certainly.
and doing something to try and mitigate that, to try and
Yeah.
fight back against these toxic mindsets that are being spread
Yeah.
online that are just dividing us. It
Sure.
feels really good and it really aligns with who I want to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm thinking right now,
That's awesome.
and we'll see how it evolves.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you, man. You're making moves.
Thank you,
Doing
brother.
good.
So now we've reached the cheat codes
Yeah.
section of the show. Cheat codes that you would give to your younger self if you could go back in time and have a conversation with 17-year-old Enzo. So
Yeah.
you're just finishing high school, you're trying to figure out what to do, you're thinking you might go to community college. If you had to give him 3 pieces of advice,
Okay.
cheat codes that
Okay.
you've learned now, what would you tell him?
Okay. Invest in Bitcoin. That's number one to 17-year-old Enzo. Invest in Bitcoin and invest in Apple. I'm sorry, those are kind of jokes. But I mean, well, that's the number one thing I'd do if I was a time traveler is get myself the cheat code to forever money. But
I think everyone would. That's a very
yes.
fair answer.
But yeah, I guess on more of a serious note, I would say I would probably tell myself to just take more time to enjoy the time you're in. So I think a lot of us fall into that trap of like we're in high school part of it's like what we're told by teachers and parents and the school system is like you really need to be thinking about your future, you need to be thinking about where you're going, you need to have a plan for everything. And I think that's a bit I mean, it's important to have a plan, I will say. I think it's important to have an idea of where you're going, but I think it's also more important to just for lack of a better term, take time to stop and smell the roses. High school I miss high school a lot because that was a time where it was a very comfortable time. Well, for the most part, lots of friends I had that I was very close with. And I think, yeah, I would just recommend just take some time to enjoy the time you're in because you're never going to get it back. You're never going to be a high schooler again. You're never going to have that sense of freedom or that sense of possibility before you. And it's important to just really enjoy that while you have it. And not to say that you don't have that now, but I think all of us can agree now that adulthood has with it a lot of burdens and a lot of stress and anxiety, and it's like that kind of weighs on you, and it's hard to really stop and enjoy the moment. But I think, yeah, across your whole life, it's important to enjoy those times when you can, because you're never going to get them back. They're always fragile.
That's something I've been pushing on the show a lot because it's something that I've recently found to be so valuable
Yeah.
is taking time to have gratitude for
Mhm.
the moment you're in and having grace for yourself that, yeah, everything might not be exactly how you want it,
Yeah.
but it'll work out
Yeah.
and just enjoy where you're at.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're going to spend your whole life wishing for things.
Yeah.
And then at the
Exactly.
end, you're going to be like, wow, I didn't enjoy
Yeah.
any of the good things that I had.
Right. Exactly.
So that's the first piece of advice you would give. What
Yeah.
else?
Oh, geez. All right. Gotta think of a couple more. Yeah, I probably would have said my second piece of advice, and this kind of stems from an article I read, I think about a year ago, that talked about how I think it was something like 70% of the time you're ever going to spend with your parents is before you graduate high school. And I think that's something that really resonated with me because for so much of my life, I had an almost adversarial relationship with my parents where it was like me versus them and they're mean and they're telling me to do stuff. And I don't want to do it. I spent so much time being caught up in that and I'll say first and foremost that I'm very lucky to have a very supporting and loving family. The one thing I've learned throughout my life is just having two parents who are still together and still like each other is an accomplishment at this stage. Like I'm I could probably count on one hand the number of marriages I know of that are still going strong after all this year and not ending in divorce. So
Sad but true.
yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, with keeping in mind that the time between your birth and graduating high school is most of the time you're gonna spend with your parents, I think just kinda similar to smelling the roses, just enjoying that, kinda basking in that a little bit more, appreciating it more, spending more time to talk to your parents and ask them for advice or life lessons, I think that's important, and the sad truth is that once you're out of high school and you're into adulthood, yeah, you still call your parents frequently, you still see them for holidays and stuff, but it's like you're never gonna have that sense of closeness, you're never gonna have that close quarters proximity to them again, and before you know it, it's gonna be over, so it's like I would definitely recommend to myself to enjoy that a lot more. And then, yeah, the other part I would say is don't be afraid to be a fuck up because we're all fuck ups in a certain regard. But I think we're all too hard on ourselves in high school. We're all trying to hold ourselves to these higher standards. But I think when you look back on your high school experience, it's like, yeah, I was a dork. I was a geek, whatever. I don't care. didn't get a lot of action, but that's just who I was. So I think it's just learning to love yourself a little bit more, learning to not be too hard on yourself and not try to be someone you're not. I think that's important.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think that having a sense of self love is one of the best things that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
And society these days
Certainly.
tells you to do anything but
Yeah.
because it's not profitable for companies
Right.
for
Exactly.
you to love yourself.
Yeah.
It's is profitable when you find every flaw and you need their solution that they're trying to sell you. And I think that we need to really do a lot in society to push back against that,
Yeah.
to try and build up a sense of, I mean, in order to make it as far as you have, wherever you are in
Yeah.
life, took a lot. There's no easy ride. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how many resources you
Yeah.
had, what sort of network or support you had. There's no easy ride. Everybody goes through their own struggles.
Yeah.
And trying to keep that in mind and give yourself that grace and
Hmm.
that love and build this sense. This is where confidence comes from.
Yeah.
It's where happiness comes from, in
For
my
sure.
opinion. And it's really important. I'm glad you talked about that.
Yeah.
And I
Like life.
certainly wish that a
Yeah.
lot of 17-year-olds
Yeah.
knew that more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, life is short, unfortunately, and we're only on this planet for a little while. So it's a waste of time to do anything but enjoy yourself. That is my opinion on it.
So if you're talking to someone who's of this age group, they're finishing high school and they're trying to figure out what they want to do in life. So they're looking at a pretty similar path to where you've ended
Yeah.
up. They're interested maybe in forestry, they're interested in working in something bigger than
Yeah.
themselves, whether it be nonprofits or like serving in some way their community and the world as a whole. And maybe they're interested in grant writing.
Yeah.
So, from all of these different hats that you've worn,
Yeah.
if you could speak a little bit on the advice that you would have for this young person, is this a field you recommend getting into? And what type of person would align with it? Like, what traits should
Yeah.
I be looking at myself? I'm a young person. I'm looking within myself, trying to figure out, do I have what it takes to really feel fulfilled in this path? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So for the forestry field, yeah, I would definitely say some measure of enthusiasm or affection for the environment always is a big factor. I mean, you gotta believe in the mission of what we're trying to do. It's a worldwide thing. There are millions and millions of people who are in the forestry field who just want to do their part to plant some trees and help protect this environment that's given us so much. It is very important to have that core driving passion for like I said, it doesn't have to be that you're obsessed with different types of trees or you have a favorite type of bird or whatever the hell it is. Like I, frankly, my mom, my whole life has been like a bird watcher. She just gets distracted every time she sees a bird, and I don't understand that. I'm like, to me, they're all just birds, and I mean, yeah, I guess they're cool, but I don't know, it's a bird. What am I going to do with that? But I mean, I would say on a holistic sense, though, I have a lot of passion for the environment, for the nature, and I think it's important to protect that. So I would say that's probably one of the most important things for the forestry field is just having that sense of like conservation or environmental protection is very important. As far as like how to kind of approach that, I mean, really the forestry field is remarkable because it attracts all kinds of people. I mean, I have no formal academic training in forestry and being an arborist and environmental science. I mean, I took classes for that, but I never got a degree in that. And there are lots of people who are like that too. I mean, I've met several other English majors who are in the forestry field. I've met statistics majors in the forestry field. It's really an all-encompassing thing. All you need to really bring to it is the passion to do the work, and I think that's the most important thing. But if you're looking to get in the forestry field, it can never hurt to take some environmental science classes, to take some biology classes, stuff like that, just to learn a little bit more about the science and the kind of technical aspects. If for no other reason to see if that really gels with you. If you're in an environmental science class and you're bored to tears, then I don't know, maybe it's not the job for you, but just kind of gauge your reaction to that, I think is important. But more than that, yeah, just the ability to, I think a sense of empathy is really important, being able to feel for different communities. Cause really what our work boils down to is just coming in and helping communities is really what we're passionate about. So just kind of having that sort of altruistic sense is a big part of it. And I would also say patience. Patience is really important because when the ideals of forestry clash with the bureaucratic realities, it's always frustrating. You have to deal with a lot of different like governmental entities, a lot of corporate entities, and they do things their own way, and that's perfectly fine, but it doesn't always make for productive work. So just having that ability to be like, okay, well, this is frustrating, this is annoying, but I'm just going to take a step back and let it work itself out for now or let them come to me. That's really important too. So it's a lot of different factors, but like I said, really the most important thing in my mind for the forestry field is just having a passion for the environment, some sort of protective instinct for it. I think that's the most important.
And would you recommend it?
I would recommend it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've met some great people through this field. It's really fulfilling emotionally and physically and all kinds of stuff. It's a perfect marriage of like, if you're in the forestry field, you're going to have to do some menial labor. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves, get a sunburn, and dig some holes in the really horribly unyielding ground and dig through some roots. But that's part of the fun too, is working with a bunch of people and cracking open a beer at the end of the day. That's a great feeling too. So, you gotta be prepared for some hardship, you gotta be prepared for some frustration and stress, but I would definitely recommend it because ultimately it's probably one of the more fulfilling things I've done in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so if somebody hears this and is very inspired and called to maybe follow a similar path,
Yeah.
do you have any specific cheat codes, things that could help them get ahead faster,
Yeah.
kind of jumping ahead on your own path? I'm a 17-year-old at this point who wants to go into forestry. What should I be doing? Should I be doing an
Yeah.
internship? Should I be looking for specific connections in my community? Should I be trying to meet certain types of people, go to college and learn
Yeah.
certain things? You talked a little bit about environmental science.
Yeah.
What else?
I would say look for internships, or it's more specifically, I'll give a shout out to the AmeriCorps program. That's a big thing we work with a lot is the federal AmeriCorps program. It's a great program. It's a great opportunity, like right out of college, or I think sometimes you can get into it out of high school. The way it works, to my understanding, because I never went through the program, but it's one of those things that I wish I had now that I've interacted with those people. But my understanding is, yeah, if you go to the AmeriCorps program, you'll be placed at a nonprofit of usually some sort of field you're interested in. You'll get an opportunity to kind of work in that field. And AmeriCorps pays you a pretty decent wage, I've heard. I know there's some student loan forgiveness programs through that. I will say the caveat is the AmeriCorps program has been threatened by ongoing government cuts, but it's, I think, hanging in there for now. But yeah, I would highly recommend the AmeriCorps program because that's just a great opportunity to kind of get out there, do some work, see if you like the field. Because really, what we ask our AmeriCorps to do is just pretty much any different type of job that we need help with, we just plug them in and go. So you'll be working through a different lot of like, I know at my company, the AmeriCorps will do like some marketing stuff. They'll do like, they'll kind of do some input on grant writing. They'll do some stuff on development. They'll do a lot of stuff on like field work, really getting out there and learning about the different trees, learning how to dig a hole, how to plant a tree, all that stuff. And I would say that's a really good litmus test for if you're cut out for the field or not, is the AmeriCorps program. Other than that, yeah, I mean, like a lot of different nonprofits have programs for like high schoolers where they can plant trees. I mean, that's the program I ran at first, was getting high schoolers to plant trees over the summer or over their weekends, and checking out any programs like that, I would highly recommend. Otherwise, just honestly like looking up some nonprofits in your area, coming in, because we're always happy to talk to people. We always want to see more people come into our field. And one of our goals as an organization is to create a new generation of environmental stewards who will kind of carry the torch of conservation. So we're always happy to talk to people. Keep an eye out on your job fairs, stuff like that. Just, yeah, keep an eye out for ways you can start dipping your toes into the water forestry and see how you like it. And then usually those programs will, I mean, I think half our staff are former AmeriCorps members who were then offered full-time positions. So there's a good way to employment right there.
Very useful stuff.
Yeah.
And for people who aren't looking to go into it, but really hear what you're talking about and want to help,
Yeah.
how should they go about finding places that are reputable to donate to?
Yeah.
I don't want my money being funneled by someone,
Sure.
but I want to help. What should I be doing to try and find the right place to donate?
Yeah. And I'll kind of amend that by saying a lot of environmental nonprofits live or die by the size of their volunteer base. So while money is always very useful, I will also say donating your time as a volunteer is very useful. Ultimately, we need people to help us plant the trees, get the trees in the ground. So I would say, yeah, keep an eye and on your local organizations, your local nonprofits. Usually you can find those by looking at your local city government's website because they'll usually list their partnerships on there. So that's usually the best way to find the most reputable ones. Other than that, anything affiliated with like the Arbor Day Foundation, stuff like that are usually very reputable. So just keeping an eye on job boards. I know there are websites where you can look for local volunteer opportunities in your area. I think a lot of different church groups and stuff, a lot of different religious groups also do a lot of work with local nonprofits. So just kind of keeping an eye out for opportunities. And yeah, anytime you have money to spare or time to spare, those are both in high need for nonprofits. So we could always use them.
Well, Enzo, thank you so much, man, for being on the show. I think we've had a really useful and productive conversation. It's been a pleasure having you on, and I hope to have you on again sometime in the future.
Thank you for having me. And I guess I'll sign off by saying plant some trees for the emperor.
For the Emperor. There it is, man.
Do you hear that? It's the call of the tavern.
If you enjoy this show and want to join a community that supports one another, you should click the link in the description to join the GG Tavern Discord. We're going to be hosting game nights, networking events, and community discussion boards there. It's also the best place to stay up to date with everything going on with GGUP. There's currently a special promotion going on called the Founders Event. The first 100 people who get 5 of their friends to subscribe to the podcast and DM me proof will gain lifetime access to a special role in the Discord server where you can enjoy some of the special perks that will otherwise only be for paid supporters of the channel. Also, the first 500 people to join the server can claim the OG title for eternal bragging rights that you were an early adopter of the show. Come on into the tavern and connect with the community today.